Welcome to the Babel Digital Communicators Podcast. I'm Jenny Mowat, CEO at Babel, and I'm really pleased to introduce Suzie Evershed with us today. Suzie is the Corporate Communications Director for EMEA region at Secureworks, and I will let you introduce yourself a bit more formally.
Thank you very much. Well, I don't know how to add to that, really. I've got a background in agency, B2B technology, and I've been in-house for the last 2 years with Secureworks, focused on cybersecurity. Secureworks is a global leader in cybersecurity, and our mission is really to help organisations of all sizes to defend against cyber threats, making sure that we're outpacing and outmanoeuvring the adversary.
And what you're missing, of course, is that you're a well-connected media hound. And what we're here to discuss today is exactly that. It's news hijacking, the ins and outs, the how, the whys, everything in between. So I thought, who else would be better than to have Suzie on the podcast with us today to discuss that?
Blushing just as well as on video
Through that time. So let's dive into what exactly news hijacking is. I thought we could start a bit with the planned versus reactive, because actually I think often when people think of news hijacking or issues jumps, they think of what they see that's broken in the news that day and people are jumping on it and commenting and giving their opinions. But there are definitely a few different sides to the coin.
For sure. And when you're kind of planning any kind of media campaign, you'll always have like a calendar of events that you know is happening. So significant days that are coming up, Black Friday's a good one, obviously Christmas, back to school. There are certain pivotal moments you know are coming. Or, you know, if you're thinking about in the world of tech, there's usually regulatory issues that are coming out, compliance laws that are getting passed, things like that you can kind of hook onto. But of course, the breaking news, and it always used to be, you know, back in the day, I'm going to sound really old on this now, you know, you'd sit down and make sure you were reading the newspapers first thing in the morning to understand what was on the news agenda for the day. But today you have to be more on it because you've got to keep track of that through the day. The news doesn't break it.
It's a 24-hour cycle.
Exactly.
There's no set time on when it's going to break.
And I think that's what's really challenging is because, you know, you turn away, you go, I'm just going to, you know, switch off for a few minutes and focus on this article I've got to write or be on a call, and then you're suddenly like, oh, something's happened.
Yeah, and how quickly can you move? But also, as we'll come into, that balance of time and what you want to say and what you want to add, because actually rushing often to comment isn't always the best approach. So I guess if we break that down as to what it is, I think you hit the nail on the head with that. It's understanding the news agenda 24 hours a day and how your brand and client can be positioned as a commentator. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's really important, is how can your brand be positioned as the commentator? That's really the core question. So when we're looking at building news hijacking, issue response, whatever you want to call it, when you're building that into your program, the first thing is to look at how and why. And why is a really big question. So, you know, what are the topics we do want to talk about? But also, what are the ones we don't want to talk about? Where's the line? And I think boundaries is a really important word as well there. So you're looking at, okay, what do we want to comment on? Why? And how are we adding to this? You see a lot of comments going out, and you see journalists saying, oh, my inbox is absolutely rammed, you know, a story breaks. And all of a sudden a journalist has got 100, 200, probably more emails in their inbox, all on the same topic.
And often all saying the same thing.
Exactly.
Expert from cybersecurity company insert says this is a devastating...
Oh, a stark wake-up call. That's my one. That's my one.
What other buzzwords that we want to throw in? It's astonishing. It's groundbreaking.
Yeah. It's a reminder for everybody. Yeah, that's great. But what's actually happened? Who's behind, especially if you're talking about security, you know, what has actually happened? Who's behind it? You know, several things happen. We often get questions, something's happened, you know, and, Heathrow, the screens aren't working, or something, probably not the screens, that's a bad example, but you know, something's happened at Heathrow and the luggage isn't going through. Most of the time, it's not a cyber attack. So us going out with a comment about, you know, cyber resilience is not appropriate.
But isn't it crazy though that often, even to my mum or her friend, like the first thing they now will think of is it's a cyber attack.
Yeah, but I mean we've had so many more significant attacks affecting I would say, consumer facing.
It's like everyday lives.
Everyday life.
Yeah.
Royal Mail was a
Yeah.
big one last year. The attacks that hit British Airways and BBC via third party, they've actually affected your mum. Whereas opposed to, you know, another organisation being, you know, ransomware isn't necessarily going to have a day-to-day impact on you or I. So it has, where the attacks are affecting the public, they're getting more aware that ransomware is a thing, because before that it's usually a scam, what you'd refer to as a scam, that's affecting, you know, your parents or your friends.
If we take a step back and just think about breaking down how it works. So you've taken that moment away from the screen and suddenly the proverbial hits the fan. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on here.
It's your podcast.
My podcast, not sure. The news is broken. Maybe it's been picked up by someone in your threat team, that they flagged something before it's actually even hit the news. Let's use that as a good scenario. So you've got some good intelligence from your threat team at Secureworks that's saying, we think there's something going on here, we're going to investigate. What do you do?
Yeah, so quite often we do get that. We have the counter threat unit, and they are obviously kind of spinning 24/7, monitoring everything. They'll let us know if something's going on. We're quite well involved in a lot of the law enforcement activity that's been taking place over the last year. You'll have seen some of it. So we know some of it's happening before. So, okay, what is it that's actually happening? Let's understand what's going to happen, what is happening. What we've done, I mean, it's probably a good time for me to take you on a teeny tiny detour of a journey of how Secureworks
I'm open to it. Let's do it.
if I may indulge myself. So when I joined Secureworks, we have this amazing team, the counter threat unit, who are really deep knowledge experts on the threat landscape. But as I lovingly refer to it, they are researchers, so they're very focused on, you know, being accurate. Everything is, it's incredibly important to be correct in what you're putting out there. So when you say we assess with moderate confidence, that's basically them saying, yeah, we're pretty sure, but you know, it's it's how we position it.
Yeah.
And so they are very reluctant to do news, sort of this issues response news hijacking, because they don't want to just go out and say something for the sake of it. So we've been on a bit of a journey with those guys to, I say those guys, hi Don and Rafe if you're listening, and everyone else.
Love a shout out.
We've been on a journey with them to say, okay, well, how do we want to talk about this? So,
and I guess in a way, is it that appetite for risk?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, again, coming back to your earlier point of the boundaries.
Yeah.
So what we say, what we don't say, but also how far do we go with that commentary? Because, I mean, the language we use is incredibly powerful. Like, we joked about those common phrases that come out, but actually single words can really kind of push you into quite a risky area.
Yeah, and you know, number one is you don't want to victim shame. When you're talking about security, you are talking about an organisation that is under attack, and you don't, you know, what's the point of going out saying, oh, they should have done this differently or that differently?
Plus,
it's not about that.
They're never going to work with you if you do that.
No, well, that's true. And you do have to be mindful of, are they a customer? Are they a prospect? You know, it's like, we're not, nothing is, you know, 100%. We all know, and it's, you don't want to say everyone's going to be attacked, but it's true. Everyone is going to be attacked. How successful that might be, or, you know, where you pick it up is different. So you do need to...
So we go back on the risk. So we're
risk.
Defining the boundaries with them. They didn't want to be, you know, 100% certain or putting their neck on the line.
Well, they need to know. They need to, okay, what's actually going on? And also, you know, what are we adding to this? There's a lot of opportunities that come in and they go, but what are we adding to that conversation? What else can we say? So we'll look at it, who's behind it? Okay, well, we know this threat group. This is what we know about that threat group. Now we can help that journalist to understand what likely happened or what's likely going to happen next. We can look at, is the data actually been published? Is it just the threat of it, et cetera, et cetera. So that's been a really good way for us to become a valued resource, so people can sense check with us. Not all of the time where we help journalists to get published, and everyone's fine with that, because it's really about using our expertise in the grand scheme without sounding too grandiose. It's like, it is about community and cybersecurity and about fighting that battle together. So anyway, that's kind of the journey that we've been on, from being quite reticent about being involved to actually taking part in a way that is knowledge sharing and helping to understand. Explainers is really where it's at.
And I think is that EMEA corporate comms role, and then also where companies do have agency support, that stakeholder management piece is so critical, I think, when it comes to successful news hijacking, because like you say, not every comment is going to land for various different reasons, timeliness or punchiness or actually adding value, but also sometimes they're just sheerly inundated with responses that it is a bit of a numbers game, and whatever that relationship is that you've built up before, whether they will use your comment or not. So managing the reality of that internally is sometimes a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one of the things to think about is, okay, we did get a comment, and actually I think it's really good. It didn't get picked up. Well, what do we do with it now? Sometimes the story is shorter lived than you expected, or didn't get the traction, or you just were, later down the line than the story is. So what next? What do you do with that comment? I think there's lots more opportunities. You can build a byline on it. You can, my much loved and overlooked tactic is a good letter to the editor. You can easily turn those comments.
Should not be sniffed at.
No, exactly. Never. And they're about the right length. If you've got a quote from a client, it's generally the right length to be a letter.
Our age here, aren't
I know.
I used to love a letter
Seriously,
to the editor.
You want to get in the FT, mate?
Yeah. It's a good tip though. It's a very fair point. Like, they still feature quite heavily, and people, they do get read. So it's not one to. Plus, there's a lot more control because it's literally just your view. Yeah,
and I think, I guess bringing us back a little bit is when you're looking at the why do we do it, and looking at with the, particularly that's with the counter threat, what's in it for us, what's in it for the brand. And I think that's for any company that you work with. And with, when you're an agency and you've got 6 or 7 clients, which ones should be involved in this conversation and what's in it for them is a really important question. You could jump on any story, but should you? Just because you can.
Yeah. It's absolutely accurate. It shouldn't, just for the sake of it, isn't the right reason to be doing it.
Yeah.
And I think all those points that you've raised about adding value and positioning your brand in the best light, just because Sky News has called you for a comment doesn't mean that actually you should feel your hand is forced to do so.
And that's a really hard thing for someone in PR. If Sky News rings you and goes, would you come on? You're like, oh my gosh, there's I've got this opportunity. I must absolutely. We all want that. We've
got to find someone that will do it.
But sometimes it is better just to say no or to say later. And again, being really self-serving. When Royal Mail got breached, we had, journalists that I work with really regularly at the Telegraph, gave us a call and said, what do you know about this? Can I have a comment? And we just said, we need to go and have a look. And we had a look and we were like, okay, we don't have enough information. So at this point, we're not commenting. His story ran on the front page, and I looked at that thinking, that could have been us, but ultimately we didn't have anything to add. However, within a few hours, we had something to add, and then we were in the next story, and then we were in all of the other stories. And, it was a really great news cycle for us when we were able to add. I believe that one was Lockbit. Okay, now we know it was Lockbit. This is what we know about the groups that operate the Lockbit ransomware. This is what is going to happen next. We were able to add the value. So, to our earlier point about timing and being able to say yes and no to things, sometimes it's not a bad thing to go, I can't comment now, but when I do comment, I've got something that's really helpful to you and helps you to build your story and to keep that story going.
Yeah, well, it's that old adage of less is more, like actually just bombarding for the sake of it with like comments that you've edited and churned out time and time again actually isn't the best tactic. So let's talk a little bit about that, the pre-prep stage. So a lot of work that we do at Babel with our clients is about establishing their positioning and what they want to be famous for and known for, and how does that change for different audiences. But more specifically with the media in mind is a point of view document. So thinking about what are the things that we know are going to come up time and time again. So particularly for a cybersecurity, it might be ransomware attacks or breaches or something, something of that ilk. So preparing draft responses that we can adapt and use so that it's quicker and faster, because we all know timeliness is still key. Obviously you want to say the right thing, but often being at the top of that inbox,
and you've probably got an approvals process that needs to go through regardless.
Sometimes we're dependent on time zones. You might not hear till later that afternoon. So let's think about what you can prepare in advance.
Yeah.
So those playbooks, the statements, do you feel that's still a worthwhile activity?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, back to basics. Who are your spokespeople? What are their job titles?
Should be handy, yeah.
And what are their specific topics? Because again, you're going to have thematic experts. Who do we talk to about ransomware? Who do we talk to about this? Iran, Russia. Again, thinking about cybersecurity. But if you've got a broader pool of clients as well, for Babel, who are your software clients? Who are your telco clients? Within that, what are their specialties? So it's almost you've kind of got to break it down by, got your client sets, then within the client, what are the areas of expertise? And then it's like, okay, well, what are they happy, those individuals, what are their lines? Because you're going to have people who they can talk about something, but they're not going to.
Yeah.
We can all talk about AI, but do we want to?
Well, it's very true, because if you haven't got something to back it up that actually links back to that company, then I think it's just blowing a lot of hot air.
Yeah, so I think those are the sort of initial prep stages. Who's going to talk about what and why? And
also practicalities of how.
Yeah.
How do we get hold of you if it is early morning? Is Slack better? Is WhatsApp? Is it email? Is it a telephone call to tell you there's a comment in your inbox? Because those practicalities are super important when you're up against it and you do want to get that comment out.
Yeah, absolutely. And are they prepared to do broadcast if it comes up? What time zone are they in? Are they on holiday? Are they in London for a change and you didn't realise, all of those kind of almost like what you might say is the kind of the admin side is really, really important when it comes to the kind of urgent response opportunities. But equally so is that calendar of events that we talked about, the pre-prepared, because you can predict, I'd say probably half of the news hijacks that come out for most companies are going to be centered around things that are coming up. The Olympics, etc. People will have big campaigns around those. So
definitely.
You can
One
predict
other key thing I think is building those relationships with the national media, broadcast bookers, the podcasters that are going to be commenting about it quite in a timely fashion. How are you getting your spokespeople out? So we do a lot of work like pitching out just bios, catching up for coffees with media to just be like, look, this is our client book. This is the sort of things they can comment about. This is why they're interesting and not a boring B2B spokesperson. What sort of things have you been doing with Secureworks to help cement those relationships?
Yeah, I know. It's funny because I was just saying this morning, it's with Secureworks, I've been really lucky. I've got this counter-threat unit. They're incredibly well connected. They are, the team do advise the government. They are ex-government for a lot of the time as well. So they're really well connected. Yeah, really, really super connected team. So I know I've got a little bit of a golden goose. However,
don't downplay it.
No, well, I mean, I say that, but I still have to, what I was saying is once people know Secureworks and know the team I've got, they know what we can offer, then I'm kind of on a good track, but I still have had to get us there. So I had to get us in front of the right people. And to be honest, it's been a real mishmash of tactics. I remember when, in fact, we were sort of trying, it must have been for at least 8 to 10 months. I was trying to get in front of Mehul at the Financial Times when he was doing the cybersecurity beat. And I'd sent invitations. Do you want lunch, coffee, with a spokesperson, without a spokesperson? I'd sent comments on things that were happening. Oh my gosh! And I'm just thinking, like, how do I kick this door in? I was tempted. I was tempted, like carrier pigeon, get in there.
Land it on the FT, might get shot down. Who knows?
But what happened was actually, to get in with him, that persistence did pay off, because once
then they changed their beat and you're starting again.
When the MoveIt breach happened, he obviously was aware of that happening. He did his own research, saw us quoted somewhere else, found me in his inbox and called me.
Just like a massive stream
of emails. After all
this
time of me harassing this poor journalist, suddenly my phone rings. He's like, "Hi."
Did you think someone was? Did you think someone was prank calling you?
Yeah. Jenny, get off the phone. So, and no journalist is going to thank me for saying, be persistent. But if you've got something that they need, and that is really, like the critical thing there. I knew what I had was something he would want and need. And we built that, we had that first contact, we built it with a meeting, a few days later, and we've continued to nurture that. And actually, although Mehel did, to your point, change beat for now, and we've now got a new reporter, he directed her to us. We've now got that relationship. So that's one example, but it really has been about persistence, and again, timing is often really important to that. It's, I've got this particular thing. For other journalists, it's been taking in, a story. We had a big story on booking.com. We had identified a scam. So taking that and using that, as a way to get through the front door with them, and then building again that relationship. But it has been a labour of love, and it continues to be that. There are still journalists that, broadcast has been my nemesis, really. Finding the right bookers and producers is really hard, and it's a full-time job in itself. So I think that's where, having an agency and working in partnership with them allows you to kind of go, okay, well, I need this to be a focus, and I need that to be a focus to build those, I guess, kind of ways in. Because once you know the right people and you show them that there's a lot of people who do just kind of send out a lot of spam, few and far between, I would say. I think there's much more professionalism in our industry now than perhaps there once was. So I do think that, you can get, once you're in front of the right people and they know you've got quality, the relationship builds itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to challenge you now. In a few words, tell me what the ingredients are for successful news hijacking.
Okay, the ingredients of successful news hijacking, I think having something really relevant and interesting to say, being able to say it in a timely fashion, that's not necessarily the fastest, but at the right time, and building great relationships as well with the media. And I say that last point slightly hesitantly, because I have, up until this point in my career, I've always said, as long as you've got something interesting to say, if you've got the right thing to say, you don't necessarily need to have that relationship. But as you kind of get to this point, when you talk about news hijacking in particular, I need to know that a journalist is going to see my name and open my email, because they know it. So
your call, definitely.
So but you kind of get from one to the, those two things work together. But yeah,
I'll let you off for the extra 100
Thanks.
words. You're an old friend, but next time
you can edit me out.
We've touched on a bit already about timing. Is it everything? I think the overarching message for that is it's not about being the fastest, and I could not agree with that more. Whilst you do want to be at the top of that box saying the right thing, I think it's coming back to what value are you adding is crucial there, and not victim shaming, as you mentioned.
And I would say, just one tiny point on that as well, the number of times where I've sent something to a journalist who's got, I was just about to file, I needed that. So it's not, even when they are just about to press
like
go. That's great, because it's like, yes, I was longer, but I've given you something that is so good.
Different.
That it's added. It has added value, and you can include it. And I think that's, I still needed to be fast. I just didn't. I still needed it to be good. It's a balance.
I think one thing we haven't, I guess the timing point kind of leads into this, but something that we often have a bit more success on, because we've talked a lot about those things that happen in the moment that are instant and you need to respond. But there's also the element of the dates that are coming up. We spoke a bit about the beginning, about regulation, so things like the EU AI Act or Consumer Duty, GDPR, NIS2 is coming up for the EU soon, DORA. But at Babel, we've done a lot of work around all of these, but more recently, the King's Speech was one that we actually had some quite good success, where we did a lot of commentary before in the build-up, what would brands, our brands that we represent, like to see.
Yeah.
Then when it dropped.
That's interesting. So you went, okay, what do we want from this?
What do we want from this, and what are we hoping to see? To sort of warm up, and had a couple of nibs from that and good few pieces of coverage. But then also when it drops, has that been included? It's about having a comment already prepared that you're updating quickly in the moment as we're watching the King's Speech. And this could be the same for like spring budget or something similar. And then the post analysis, actually going through all the detail, maybe in an opinion article or blogs or something else. But, for us, that's worked really well. And we managed to get Forbes to one of our IT consulting clients, which was, a really exciting moment for us. But it's it's thinking of it almost like three-dimensional. So there's different stages that are also important to getting news hijacking right.
Yeah, definitely. And as you were talking through that, it reminded me of something I did quite a long time ago, and I'm going to chuck this in because I'm gonna say that this was an award-winning news hijack. Okay,
was it? Did it win an award?
Let's say it did win an award.
Okay, all right. I'll get back in my box.
We did some analysis for a client called Digital Science, and they track one of the sort of subsidiary companies, the incubator companies. They had tracked funding. We never really did much with them. But through our kind of watching the news, what's coming up, what's being talked about, we tracked that there were a few peaks coming up where people were talking about research funding. Okay, so what's this about? And there were sort of three key peaks. It was the Scottish referendum, the autumn budget, and the Brexit referendum, where research, swear words. But research funding actually formed really important points for all of those things. So we knew, so as the Brexit referendum was coming up, we knew research funding was going to be an important point of that. So what we did was got this incubator company to say, okay, well, this is all the funding we get from the EU into the UK. If we leave, where's the shortfall? And it was something like £20 million that we get each year from the EU for research in the UK. So the question isn't, it wasn't, okay, you'll lose it. It was, if we leave,
it goes, where's it going to come from?
Are we going to lose that money? Yeah. What do we need to do? And because we had that data, we knew this was coming up. We took that data and we used that to get into the Brexit conversation, which is an incredibly busy news cycle as you were coming up. But we made that a point, again, front page of the FT. We had something like 50 pieces of coverage. Including national, it's all across the nationals. We've got broadcast coverage.
It's all about finding those effective stories, though, isn't it?
Exactly.
And the data to back it up.
That's it.
And being often make you stand out.
Saying something interesting, and it did win an award. So technically, news. But it fits with what you're saying about the King's Speech. Yeah. It's like, okay, that's the busy conversation, the King's Speech. This is what we want to see from it, and then and continuing to drive that, which is incredible. So I think it's a smart way of doing it.
On the flip side, where can it go wrong? I mean, we've touched a bit on tone and saying those buzzwords that we all hear. My big point is B2B tech does not have to be boring.
Yeah.
We don't all need to say the same thing. Yeah. We don't all need to reference like how it's changing the industry and digitalizing our lives. B2B companies can have opinions and interesting ones. Yeah. What's your view? Where can it go wrong?
I mean, I think this is probably where I think there's more of a line between B2B and B2C. I think consumer brands can potentially have more fun but run more risk. And if you look at news hijacking gone wrong, the examples are predominantly consumer examples where somebody's seen a trending hashtag and jumped on it, and actually the hashtag doesn't mean what they think it means, or they've taken something that's actually probably quite sensitive. But I think equally for bringing that back to cybersecurity, one of our kind of top mantra is we don't victim shame, and I think you have to be really thoughtful of that. If somebody's having a cyber attack, yes, that people want to know what's going on, but you need to be, if you go out and go, oh, they've done it wrong, that's not going to end well for you. And I think in a recent major outage, of which we won't go deeply into,
huge elephant in the
room. But a lot of early people went out and were like, oh no, they've done a really terrible thing. Well, actually, is that helpful? Or does it just make you look like you're ambulance chasing? And ambulance chasing is the is the phrase, isn't it, for this? We don't want to do that. So yes, it can go wrong. But I think if you get those early stages of prep that we talked about, where you kind of keep safe,
the boundaries, the tone, what's our message, what value are we adding, ensuring that nothing's going out that actually doesn't build on the story.
But to your point, B2B does not have to be boring. You can have an opinion, you can say things that are a bit tongue-in-cheek in the right circumstances, but you have to be careful, and I think you have to be prepared. is it true to your brand?
Yeah, and your ethos, what you stand for. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. One final question, because we touched on it a bit about checking, are they customers? How do you approach the potential of them being a prospect? So you're already speaking to them, they're in the funnel, conversation being had, or they could potentially be a prospect.
I mean, everyone's potentially a prospect, right?
Yeah.
I think that's really, again, you just have to be thoughtful of what you're saying. And we always check, we always know where we stand, but ultimately, we are not victim shaming. So
it's almost if you get all the other bits right, it doesn't matter which
our priority is helping
are.
them. So as long as we're helping them, and we are often involved again in, as long as what we're saying is helpful, then we know that we're not victim shaming. I think that's really the most important thing. But ultimately, any customer is potentially a prospect. So, and I think that's true for any company, not just cybersecurity.
Well, it's been a very insightful chat, Susie. Thank you so much for taking the time with us today at Babel.
I feel like we just had a good old gym.
I know.
Has the world been put to rights?
So, thank you for joining the Digital Communications podcast with us today, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much.